out. My buddy, legend told, my buddy tells me I was in my hammock and I had a bear sniff my butt. I don't think it's true, but he's diehard, you know, bear was sniffing your butt. You know, like I said, with bugs, you know, using a bug net will help you, you know, sleep peacefully. Another thing that I found personally is I use drab colors. You can see that my hammock is brown. My tarp is a dark gray. If you have really bright colors, that's going to attract insects that are attracted to colors, you know. I found even mosquitoes don't bother me as much because I have some neutral colors. Now in certain seasons like black flies, I'll absolutely use a bug net, but I would say 85% of the time now, I just leave it at home. I don't get that bothered by bugs anymore. Any questions on pests? No? We're good? All right, so successful sleeping how-tos. So we're going to talk about how to stay warm, how to lay flat, and how to stay dry. So staying warm through the night, you're going to want to use a properly rated sleeping bag for the temperature that you're sleeping in. So if it was a night like tonight and I was going to go hammock camping, I would want to make sure I had at least a 15-degree bag. You know, it's going to get down into the 20s. You know, might be at 20 tonight. And you want to make sure it's a specific rated bag for men or women. Women and men have different metabolic rates. And a men's bag that's 20 degrees might be a 30-degree women's bag. So that's very important, and it's something a lot of people sometimes overlook. You're going to make sure that you have some insulation underneath you, like I said before, to prevent what we call cold butt syndrome. Basically, a sleeping pad will work. If you're using a sleeping pad, you can use a foam pad. That's what I use. You know, you would just lay that down in your hammock before you started sleeping. You can also use your inflatable pad. The one thing with your inflatable pad, though, is you want to make sure that it's not pumped up like you'd be sleeping on the ground. You want to deflate it quite a bit. Otherwise, it's going to be very slick and it's going to want to slide out from underneath you, and you're going to wake up and your pad's going to be on the ground. If you deflate your pad a little bit, it's going to be a little more malleable. It's going to form up underneath you. It's going to fill back up with air as you lay down on it and keep you warm. So you don't have to go fancy with anything underneath you. I personally have, before these became very popular, and before we were stocking in the store, I made this. This is my hammock underquilt. This goes underneath me. This is a 3/4 length underquilt. So I attach this to either end of my hammock suspension. Have a methodology with it. Still figuring it out 10 years later. We'll just go with that. And then on the other end as well, I like to attach it. And if you're ever using an underquilt, you want to make sure that it is actually up high like this, so that when you're laying down in it, it actually comes up underneath you. You don't want to have any airspace. Otherwise, that airspace is never going to get heated up. A lot of them will slide on a channel, so you can adjust it however you're sleeping. And then that just goes underneath your hammock, like so. E&O sells them as well. They sell them in various temperature ratings. And just like your sleeping bag, you're going to want to make sure that whatever you use, foam pad, insulating pad, underquilt, you want to make sure that that's rated for your temperature as well. Because if you just use your foam pad, but you're doing winter hammock camping, you're going to still be really cold, probably colder than any other time. I want to also make sure I'm wearing proper clothing, so I always carry a pair of base layer top and bottoms, and a nice clean pair of socks. They actually stay with my sleeping bag in my dry sack, and that's my fresh pair of clothing every time I go to sleep. It's going to make sure that I have no moisture on me that's going to cause me to get cold. I always change into those right as I'm about to get fed. And if you're really cold, you can do a couple jumping jacks, little push-ups, get that blood pumping a little bit. That's going to help you feel a little warmer. Because another thing that's kind of a not known factor is it doesn't matter if you have the best sleeping bag, the best gloves, the best jacket. You need to be warm to keep you warm. So if you're putting something on and you're cold, number one, it's going to take so long to heat it up, and you're probably thinking, man, this is not even a good product. But what you really need to do is make sure you're warm. Get into it, and what that's going to help, that insulation is going to help you do is sustain your warmth throughout the night. And cold butt syndrome will happen even when the temps just go below 70 degrees. So 65 degrees, you got a perfect June night, you don't have anything underneath you, you're probably still at risk of getting cold underneath you. So even then I'll still carry my pad. The only time I'll never use anything is if it's going to be like a 90-degree night in August. And I want to be cold because I've been hot all day. Any other time I'll use something underneath me. And there's my whole setup, kind of set up with my underquilt, my sleeping pad, and my tarp. I was up in Vermont last year with that one. And my bag and my underquilt are rated to 30 degrees, so 75% of the year, even sometimes in the winter, I can use that. So I'm also a pretty big guy. I'm also a hot sleeper, so I can take things down a little colder. I found personally than what ratings are. But you'll have to find that out for yourself. Camp out on your porch with your stuff, or in your backyard, or in a place that you can abandon if you're too uncomfortable. Tinker and see what works for you with your insulation. Now I was talking about laying flat in a hammock. Now, a lot of people will lay end to end, and they'll kind of look like a banana. They kind of look pretty uncomfortable, like they're in a lazy boy chair when you're watching the Super Bowl. And you want to kind of lay flat. You want to be able to be comfortable. So you want to lay on a diagonal. And that's where that sag in the hammock comes in play. Because now, when you want to get into your hammock, all you got to do is spread your hammock out. It's at chair height. And then I kind of, I don't think these will hold me here, but I will lay back in a diagonal and put my feet off to one side. And what that does is, I would say you're probably going to be 98, 95% flat, and you're going to feel like you're on a bed of clouds. And because you have that sag, you're not going to have any of those ridge lines. You might have a ridge underneath your calf where the fabric's a little tighter, but it's nothing that's waking me up in the night. I never have anything tight across the back of my head. I usually just stack a pair of socks or a pair of gloves underneath my neck. I usually don't even need a pillow half the time. It's very comfortable when you lay on a diagonal. And that's why that sag is important. So, any questions on insulation or staying warm? No? Okay. Let's go on to tarp talk. So, a couple of things we'll talk about is styles of tarps, knots, to use a ridge line or not, and staying dry in the rain. So you have a couple of common styles of tarps here. You have your asymmetrical, which is kind of rectangular tarp hung as if it was a diamond. You have a diamond tarp itself, a hex/cat-cut tarp, which is that middle one. You can kind of see in the picture that a lot of the lines are sloping, like they're little mini arcs. And what that does is when you hang a hex or a cat-cut tarp, and you put tension on that curved line, the curved lines want to kind of come to a straight line. So you don't have to have as much tinkering to make your tarp be nice and flat and have no sag in certain areas because of the design of the tarp itself. And that's kind of how a lot of the tarps over here are designed. I use a rectangular tarp. I had one before I started camping, and it's what I've been using. It's never let me down. And it's probably the most common you'll find. You can find them if you wanted to go to Walmart and find a blue tarp to try it with. You can do that too. And then you got winter and 4-season tarps. Now, what makes these unique, as you can see from the picture on the right, is it actually has built-in doors to help block you from the wind. You can see it looks a little different when it's laying flat, but when it's actually and from the profile here. But when you see it hanging up, it has a lot of coverage. They're usually a lot longer of a tarp, so they go down towards the ground. Some of them even go all the way to the ground, so you have no draft of air coming up underneath you. You're basically in a tent in a hammock, essentially. You know, with that you have a lot more weight. You know, the very top one's going to be your lightest weight, and then you're going all the way down to your heaviest weight. So picking something based on your needs and your ambitions. Again, the hex tarp, the cat cut tarp, and the rectangular tarp, probably the most popular and most versatile in my opinion. Now, there's me hanging up at Black of Shannon. Just to talk about my tarp real quick. So I showed you guys the prusik line, prusik knot, and the trucker hitch. And with those knots, you could buy a piece of cord and a couple smaller pieces of cord, and you can make something similar to what I have here. So no matter where I hang my hammock, after I get my line taut with the trucker knot or a figure 9 carabiner, I have my prusiks attached to the ends of my tarp. So if you can kind of see my tarp's way cattywampus, it's all the way over here. I want to push it over to the other side. I take off a little tension. I slide it down. And then I'll have it properly positioned over my hammock. I find that to be way more versatile than using guidelines. You know, if you just had a piece of cord attached here, you tie it over here, you run over to the other side, you tie it up, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh man, I'm 3 feet exposed on the other side. So then you have to come back over, untie that side, untie this side, readjust. Just takes a little more tinkering. As you get used to it, you can, you kind of eyeball a little better. I'm not good at eyeballing things, so I use this method, and then I have my tarp set up in seconds instead of minutes.